Ladies and gentlemen, booze and movies.
Bottle opener for you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone to... Oh, shit, my beer's leaking. That's a weird title.
Usually you're not supposed to shake those up before you open.
Well, I did have to run down the hallway because I thought my dog was going to die.
That's right.
So that's the interesting story to start this podcast on, is we were about to start recording, and then my wife's like, "Hun, can you come here? Something's wrong with Zelda." So I had to go see why my dog was dying. She's not dead.
Yeah, I'd never seen a dog have a seizure before. I guess I still haven't because she's fine, but...
It might have been a seizure. We don't know. It might have been a small seizure, or she was just being a bitch.
Yeah. It's kind of like when like your computer glitches and you're like, fuck, don't you, please just come back. I'll do whatever you want. Please just don't do that again. Windows, please. And then it comes and you just restart and everything's fine. You're like, fuck, don't ever do that again.
I know,
How
right?
dare you?
I was sitting there being like,
don't you ever make me worried again.
Well, that's, we have the
I don't have a dog, so I have to use my computer as an example.
Hey, that could be worse than a pet sometimes. Well, I mean, the joke is that it seems like every time you come to my house, something's going on. It doesn't, like, nothing can ever be quiet.
The universe will not let us just be friends and hang out.
Yeah.
Something has to happen. There has to be drunk people in the theater. Call back. Or I get dehydrated and delirious and try to drive home. And you okay?
That is hoppy as fuck.
So we're both... I'll just hit pause on that. Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm not dying.
So we're booze and movies today. We're drinking Star Trek: The Next Generation 30th anniversary beer. So from last year, because I was 1987. So
yeah.
It's called the Captain's Holiday, which is a reference to the episode Captain's Holiday.
Where Captain Picard went onto a planet where it's meant for people to get boned, basically.
Yeah, it was our introduction to Risa. And the cool thing about the label here is, so you would think that the Starship Enterprise would be in the foreground, but no, it's the statue that you carry around on Risa when you want everyone to know that you're looking to get boned.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, I mean,
and
I want one.
There's a funny joke in that episode where, because Captain Picard doesn't know about Risa. He's just like, oh, it's a beach or whatever.
Yeah, it's like he thought it was like a resort.
And Riker, who goes on vacation usually to bang prostitutes. It's been in season 4, episode 10. Yeah. The gang, he bangs prostitutes.
Yeah, it was established.
The game, not the gang. But he's like, Captain, let me do you a favor. Just carry the statue around with you.
Well, no, he told him to buy him one. Remember, he's like,
oh, make sure you buy
pick me one up.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he wanted it.
And
Riker disguised it as saying, I want that as a souvenir because I want one.
But he'll get him to. But it leads to Picard just carrying it around, and all these hot chicks are like, "Hey, baby, hey."
Yeah.
You know, I never thought I liked bald men until now. So I haven't taken my first sip of this yet. Should I?
Yeah, well, okay, so it's hoppy, which I knew it would be because I bought the Klingon ale, and it was really hoppy also. So I knew there was going to be hops, but it said with citrus flavors. There is no citrus. This is just hop. It is just hop. But you like IPAs.
Okay, here's my first sip. Ooh, that's like an IPA.
Yeah.
Bite to it. That's
interesting.
Okay, so another Star Trek reference. I'm feeling quite like... when Data in Generations, when Data puts his emotion chip in, and he goes to 10 forward, and Guinan's like, "Here, try this yellow liquor," and he's like, "Oh God, I hate this, but I want more because I don't know what this means." But I do know what this means, and this is I don't know if I'm going to finish this tonight.
Oh yeah,
that's got quite a bite to it.
I'm going to hate drink mine.
Yeah. I want to finish. Oh.
I can't let the beer win.
I'm gonna finish you.
So because I found this beer and we decided to try it, and I scoop beer into my carpet so it doesn't fuck up my brand new TV trays. We're getting new carpet sometime. It's all right.
When did the TV tray take precedence over the carpet?
About the time I realized how fucked up this carpet was.
Yeah.
But we decided we're going to talk about. What, Star Trek in movies or Star Trek movies or just Star Trek kind of in general?
Well, it's kind of weird because you texted me pictures of this beer, and I was thinking about how, like, does a day go by when I don't make a reference to Star Trek?
No, and not a day goes by that Heather doesn't think about leaving me because of Star Trek.
Yeah. But it's kind of like, this relates to Star Trek again. Like, this is like that one time, and this is like that other, it's like a Family Guy cutaway. Like
everything just leads back.
I was thinking, again, you were showing me this beer, and I was thinking in my head, I shall sample your Captain's Holiday beer, much in the same way that here's a deep cut. Much in the same way that Commander Kern says, I will sample your dead, burnt bird when he's a guest on the Enterprise. And it's just so pervasive, but in a good way.
Yeah. Well, and I think, in the first episode of this, we talked about how we met in the office and everything, but like, I think a lot of it started out too, because we started eventually, once we both realized we both like Star Trek, Next Gen, mostly, we started kicking those jokes back and forth. I'm one of those guys that don't remember everything, like every episode. Like, I remember the episode entitled this happened. But I
am one of those guys.
Well, and I envy you for that, because I actually wish I could remember those little details. Because Star Trek Next Generation for me was, my mom loved Star Trek because she loved the original one when she was a kid, and she loved Next Gen. So it was kind of like that, the times you get along with your parents. I would sit with my mom, we'd watch Next Gen. And I remember my mom and I went out, and we kind of went to dinner and everything to kind of like say a goodbye to it when they had the final episode. And so Star Trek in that respect is, always been kind of important to me. And it's like, Gene Roddenberry even said, like, he was accused multiple times of making a show too smart for his audience.
Yeah.
Because he would put plot lines in there of like actual relevant social
because like original Trek, it was pretty heavy-handed actually. Original Trek was like, this episode is about automation. This episode is about nuclear weapons. The Doomsday Machine. The one that kind of gets overlooked is, what's it called? A Private Little War, or
I think so. I remember
the one
similar to that.
Can't remember what it's called, but they land on this planet that's at war with its neighboring planet, but the war is conducted by computers. So the computer theorizes an attack and then theorizes how many people die in this attack, and then those people are notified and they just show up to suicide booths. They're like, it's so much more humane than
that's right.
Actual bombs.
Yeah, it was like it was digital battle, but with real outcomes. That was really I remember that episode now, and that was really fucking weird, but kind of made you think about it.
But then you think about that if you're in the middle of the Cold War and you're being told that the Soviet Union's got a bomb pointed at you at all times. That kind of rings, you can relate. But I would say, because I started watching Next Generation because I'm a child of the 80s. And Star Trek does deal with a lot of, that's why modern Trek kind of sucks to me. Like Discovery, even going back to Enterprise, because they keep trying to recapture that magic they had with Next Gen, where it's like, we're going to discuss high morals. Like there's a moral dilemma presented to the crew in every episode.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what would, and basically it doesn't come out and say it, but it asks you like, what would you do in this situation? Like, what would you do if you were like the episode called Pen Pals, where Data is communicating with this little girl on a planet that's about to explode from volcanoes.
Oh God, that episode, seriously?
There's like this big conversation, and it's like, well, okay, do we save this planet? What if it's a disease? What if it's a war? How do we intervene?
Where you draw on the line? Yeah.
Are we gods, or or in the episode from the third season, Who Watches the Watchers, where you got the primitive Vulcans, and they discover the scientists are hiding behind holograms.
Yeah.
Observing them.
Well, and so, not to cross the streams here, but Doctor Who kind of did an episode like that. He was back in Pompeii before he exploded. Before it exploded, and it was getting ready to explode, and Doctor Who, unless he gets directly involved in an event, he usually tries to stay out of key events in history.
Mm-hmm.
Key
As
events,
you should.
Key events that shouldn't be changed. And his companion at that time says to him, she says, maybe not save everyone, but like just save one family. Just like pick someone and just save someone.
Just so you can have your conscience clear that you saved somebody from this?
Or? Almost. It was a different sort of plot line, because it was almost like a saving his soul kind of thing. Because there was some stuff happening in the series that was turning him dark. He's starting to just like give up on the universe. But the Federation, to draw it into why that matters, is the Federation always had that thing. It's like, you don't intervene.
The Prime Directive. Yeah. Rule number 1.
So that's how that kind of ties in. But yeah, it's that whole thing that you said, like what, where you draw the line of who and what you save, and plots like that, like made you think. I know Roddenberry wasn't involved in this one, but I mean, there's a Voyager episode that I actually really love. I'm a Voyager fan. I know a lot of people hate Voyager. I loved Voyager, not more than Next Gen, but I love Voyager.
Voyager had so much potential.
It kind of went weird near the end.
No, well, yeah, but it could have from the beginning. But I won't go off on you. Finish your story, and then I'll start shitting all over Voyager.
That's fine. Hey, that's what we're here for. No, just the one I love is there's this missile flying through space, and all these missiles carry an AI for getting them where they're going.
Oh, the Dreadnought.
And the planets are so far apart that it takes them light years to blow up the other planet. Well, in the time it took for the missile to get there, the planets developed warp speeds, got to each other, made peace. The war is over, but this group of fucking missiles is still flying towards the other planet.
I thought you were talking about the one where the Maquis missile gets into the Delta Quadrant. I'm
sorry.
No. That's a different one.
Yeah, that is. I like that episode though. But yeah, so they get one of the missiles on board. I forgot why, but there's some reason they got it, and they start communicating with the AI in it because they're trying to figure out like what the fuck are you doing, and eventually they get the AI to understand the war is over. What you're doing is going to like restart the war, and the people that you were built to save are going to die because you're going to restart the war. And this missile makes the decision to fly into the other ones and blow up, thus stopping them from making it to their target. So plot lines like that, they still followed through the Voyager. Like it was that whole thing. Like where is the line? What is right and what is wrong?
But the problem is after a while, Janeway just said, "Fuck the Prime Directive." We're home.
Especially in the last like 2 episodes.
And it comes back because there was the one Voyager where it's like finally there's consequences to her actions, where the guy, she makes the deal with the Borg, right, to get across their space.
Only so she can come back in the past and then fuck the Borg over. Yeah.
Well, but also it allowed them to destroy species 846712309.
Yeah, it was
which saved the Borg. And so like this guy whose planet was assimilated after that comes and hijacks the Voyager with this fake starship, the Dauntless, that he created, and he's trying to drive them all towards being assimilated out of revenge. And it's like, oh, finally, and of course they get out of it, obviously, but finally some kind of consequence to Janeway. I'm going to be a negotiator, and we're going to change the Borg's minds aren't going to be changed. Sorry, they're not going to see what a great negotiator you are, and then suddenly be good after you saved them from their own consequences. Because when the Borg were out just detonating interdimensional bombs, and then they opened up a rift, and then they're like, "Oh, there's a new species in that. Let's assimilate it." Oops.
Man, can you imagine the idea of like if the Borg had full access to an interdimensional plane? Man, the universe would be fucked. Unless there was someone cooler than the Borg.
Well, they had access to time travel, and they fucked it up.
It's because the Queen went back in time and just did nothing for a while, which was really weird.
They went back. They provoked a battle with the Federation, and then brought a starship back with them that foiled their whole plan.
Yeah, and gave Data skin.
Yeah, and redid his emotions again.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things.
Yeah,
in First Contact.
Well, it's like before First Contact there was Generations, which is like you've got two different visions for a movie. Competing with each other.
I laugh at Generations. It's good, but it's not good for the reasons.
It was fun when I was 14, but
yeah, looking back on it, it's not a good movie for me right now. It is not a good movie for the reasons they made it.
Yeah. Well, with the TV shows, you can what saved Star Trek, all of it, was because in the 60s they didn't rate TV by demographics. It was just how many people are watching overall.
Yeah.
Each network at any given time. And Star Trek was like in the 60s or 50s of, in the top 100 shows. So like get the axe. Then they started rating the reruns and noticing, hey, who watches this shit? 12 to 30-year-old males. Single 12 to 35-year-old males. So they're like, hey, let's do more, we can do Star Trek toward, to that audience. That's Next Gen and Deep Space Nine took that. But with movies, feature films are like, no, we can't do it niche like that. They can't be an art house Star Trek film only for the nerds.
You got to broaden it.
So they're like, we've got to get Captain Kirk in here somehow because the dumb cows in the theater aren't going to know who these people are in pajamas running around this ship unless it says Captain Kirk, you know.
Which, man, schlubby Captain Kirk trying to run around that ship and punch Malcolm McDowell.
You brought back you brought him out of paradise to punch a guy in the face.
Yeah.
Come on, Picard. And that's why Picard is ripped in every following movie.
And
is because he learned his lesson about getting his ass kicked by Ian McDermott.
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
Which I'm just saying, Malcolm McDowell is like one of the coolest fucking actors. He should have walked through Shatner.
Well, I was waiting for him to go all Clockwork Orange on him. You know, he didn't have his cane.
He didn't
have his cane or his droogs.
Yeah, I don't know why is Malcolm McDowell in so many films where he wants to fuck his sister.
I can't answer that.
I don't understand it.
I can't answer that. Why is all of the Star Trek Next Gen movies have an old British actor as the bad guy? You have Malcolm McDowell, then you have Alice Krieg, and then an old British actor is a good guy, James Cromwell in that movie. He's a good British actor. Does a lot of Trek.
It's because of the accent.
And then F. Murray Abraham, and then Tom Hardy, which Star Trek launched Tom Hardy's career. Now he's like Mr. Badass Hollywood superstar, and he's probably very embarrassed by Shinzon from 2002.
Man, see, I wouldn't care. Like if I played even like a shitty side part in a Star Trek thing, but that launched my career, I would at everything they'd be like, so what got you into acting? I'm like, fucking Star Trek, bitches. Yeah. I'd be so happy with it.
Or you would just never you would be the shitty walk-on part that would never work again, but you have a career going to Star Trek conventions talking about your shitty walk-on part.
I was ensign number blah blah blah, and I died when the tentacle beast drug me underwater.
A guy my high school in California has a few famous alumni. But a guy I didn't go to school with him. I'm class of 1998, so you guys just all do the math on that. A guy who graduated like in 92 or 93 was like an actor, and he had a part in the finale in All Good Things where he's the guy. He's either on the medical ship or the Future Enterprise where he's like a crewman who bumps into old delirious Picard in the hallway and says, "The bridge is that way, sir," and then goes on about his day. And I was like, I can make it too. I can make it too. I can be because it was like a presentation of famous alumni, or well, kind of. We didn't have Brandon Crawford. Nobody knew who Brandon Crawford of the San Francisco Giants was yet, but it was like he brought his clip with him too. It was like, "You're me on Star Trek," and it's like, and the other was like, "I work for NASA. I'm like an actual." Anyway, but it was like, I have a Star Trek connection. A guy who went to the same high school as me was on Star Trek, and I was just so proud. And I was like, I could make it too. And
I would love that. You could give me the shittiest part. I could have been one of the people who just walking by in the hallway while they're going to the elevator. I would have been so happy.
Yeah,
just to walk down that set, to be on that next gen, that beautiful gray carpeted hallway. That's what happens to IPAs, man.
Had a beer explosion. All I did was set it down.
You didn't even move it that fast either.
Now we're just ruining all of the...
Here, I was just using a sticky note to like spoon it towards the carpet. Do you want one?
It's not going to stain it, is it? Should we...
The carpet? Well, I mean, it's brown carpet and it's brown beer, so I think there's some...
But what about the table? It's not going to be...
this one didn't start bubbling up, so I don't think that one will. You can probably just leave it.
We'll wipe it up when we're done.
Okay.
You can edit that out. That's kind of silly.
No, it's funny.
Yeah, Star Trek.
Well, so we were talking about how cool it would be to, just be...
Yeah, if you were just... Because oh, man. Again, when I was a kid, Universal Studios had this interactive Star Trek show where they would grab people out of the audience, put them in the movie uniform, the red shirt, the burgundy jacket from Star Trek 2 uniform, and they would splice in your scenes with clips from or outtakes from the movies.
Oh wow.
And I was like 8 years old, and they're like, you have to be 12 to be a part of this. I was like, Mom, Dad, we're coming back to Universal Studios on my 12th birthday so I can be a part of Star Trek Interactive. And by then it had already shut down for like the Back to the Future ride.
Yeah.
Or the Water World show, which is still going on. at Universal Hollywood.
Oh man, last time we went there,
Are you aware of this? That the Waterworld interactive show
I went to it.
Is still going on. Yeah. I went to it too when it was new.
We went to it, so we would do the Halloween Horror Nights thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And while I was still at GCR, Kimberly, right after she left, because she still had contacts with the people over there, she got us day passes to the park too. So we went, and
that lady never stopped talking about. I used to work for Universal Studios. Work for Universal Studios.
Kimberly was all about it. She was a sweetheart to me, but man, she was all about having had worked there. And what was great is she got us the day passes, so we went, before we went to the Halloween Horror Nights, and we were in between stuff that we wanted to do, so we went and we saw the Waterworld show. And the lady in it kept saying Mariner really weird. She was like, Marinor! And like driving her little fucking speedboat around the thing, and it kind of took Heather and I out of the show because we're looking at each other like, the fuck does she say?
Yeah.
Marinor. We know it's an OR when you write it on paper, but it's not a hard OR.
No, Mariner is an ER.
Is it an ER?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. It is an ER. Why was she doing Marinor?
Is she British?
Yeah, that's still no excuse. It's just like aluminium. Don't add letters.
Oh, I hate that about the British. Why? Yeah.
At work, Richard, if you hear this, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I like your country, Richard.
I love you, Richard. I don't know you, but I love the British people. I just wish you'd speak English.
He's a very nice.
Speak American. You're in America.
He's a very nice man. I work with sometimes. He is originally from Great Britain. But to the back on the thing of Star Trek before we talk about Waterworld, which man, Waterworld could be its own damn episode. I love that movie, but I know it's weird. But the movies, because I gotta talk about this. There's the mythos that the odd movies are bad and the even movies are good with the original Star Trek movies, and then all the next gen movies are just kind of awful. Which I'm not saying Jonathan Frakes, you directed them, and you know what, anyone who can get through directing a movie, it has respect for me. Even like fucking Don Dohler and shit.
Yeah, it's a tough job.
Yeah, that is hard to do no matter what you're doing. So total respect to him, but just. So when Nemesis came out, my mom through her work got free tickets, but they were for this early showing that was before the early showing. So it's like 7 a.m. they're showing this movie. And we lived about an hour and a half from the theater because I could never, for some reason, live in a town that has either multiple theaters or is close to a theater. So, I'm younger at that time, so my dad gets us up and we go to it. And my dad and my brother are watching Nemesis. And, you're a kid, you get tired and you fall asleep, but I loved Star Trek at that time. And I fell asleep in Nemesis. Not even like I leaned my head back. Like I folded seats down and laid down because I was just done.
Yeah.
I woke up about the time Data was launching himself out of the torpedo bay to get to the other ship, and I was like, yeah, fuck it.
Why would
And then B4 takes his place, and it's like, God damn it, seriously.
And this was said on the internet before, but the show wrapped things up pretty well. Nice poker game, ship flies off into the sunset, and then 6 months later, we're blowing the ship up. We've got, and then everything is just shoot 'em up, and
it's because we reached the action.
We've rammed the ship again, and oh god,
and so the one I think breaks at least as far as the original movies. I think the one that breaks the odd even pattern is obviously the first one, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I love Star Trek: The Motion Picture because of how slow it is.
Yeah,
I love because they had the ability to do this visual extravaganza. I think actually does do it pretty well. There were
some really good photographic effects.
Yeah, and this is back when people were doing this shit by hand, and it's beautiful.
And that's Douglas Trumbull, who also did Space Odyssey and would eventually do Blade Runner. And
is it?
And yeah, he's that guy was really good.
Man,
the faults with the motion picture. Here's the timeline: is because like I said, in the early '70s, Star Trek was in reruns, and it was like, hey, people are watching this again. And then they did the animated shows like Saturday morning cartoon fluff stuff. And then Paramount is like, this is before Fox, right? So Paramount was like, we want to be the fourth TV network. What do we launch with? Star Trek. Let's bring back Star Trek. And they had everybody signed except Leonard Nimoy because he was in his I Am Not Spock, and I don't want to do TV anymore. TV's for kids. I want to do movies now. They had everybody back. They had some new characters. They had sets. They had those god-awful uniforms, the blue tunics. And they had the ship redesigned to where it looked almost like the eventual movie Enterprise, but not quite. It was sleek and streamlined, but still had the red paint on the side like the 60s Enterprise. And then Star Wars happened.
Just
in 1977. And they're like, holy shit, we got to make movies now. Because look, sci-fi is marketable at the box office. But what they didn't follow through with is that Star Wars was like, Jaws. They credit Spielberg and Lucas with Jaws and Star Wars for starting that summer blockbuster thing where it's a really grandiose but simple story.
Yeah.
That you just go and you shove popcorn in your face. And Star Trek tried to do that, but they rushed into it and they couldn't get all those wonderful visual effects. They actually half-assed them. They look great, but if they had like an extra 6 months to do them, they would have looked even better.
Yeah.
And that's why they redid the special edition to redo all that. But they rushed it in and they threw it into theaters in December and banked on the publicity and the name brand to get people to go see it. And they were like, yeah, that's cool. And that's what got Leonard Nimoy back into it, because like, oh, it's a movie. It's sophisticated now. I can do some real acting. And he does, because Spock, that's where he takes Spock in a different direction where he gets all emotional.
Yeah. And I mean, Wrath of Khan. So Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan.
Finally some phasers, right?
Right? So I actually love Wrath of Khan. Even when I was a little kid and I wasn't too much into the original series, which I've started to really love the original series as I've kind of grown up. Because I grew up in that 90s time where like special effects were coming in. So unfortunately, when I was a little kid, I had that little chunk of me that was like, it's not flashy, I don't care.
Right.
Which I missed out on a bunch of shit. But like I love Wrath of Khan because they still had that slow build element, kind of like Motion Picture did, but they had the action too. And like you said, Leonard Nimoy wanted to bring Spock in a different direction. I feel like he got to do that because that super emotional scene with him dying in the reactor. I mean, Nimoy's a great actor, and you feel that. I mean, it's sad that Shatner is more notorious because, I mean, sorry, Nimoy acts circles around Shatner any day of the week. Even from his grave, I think he could outact Shatner. But love you, Nimoy.
Well, they're both of them are classically trained actors. They went to learn how to, they went to learn technique. They're not like, Miles Teller, who just has a pretty face. And here's some lines. Or not Miles Teller. Who's the guy? Who's Han Solo? Aldenrich.
I haven't seen it yet.
Sucks. Sounds like he's trying to do a Christian Slater impression the whole movie.
Isn't that who Han Solo was?
Hey, how you doing? I've made a few special modifications myself.
Oh my god, I want. Can we just redo the movie with that? I know people have done the Christopher Walken as Solo, but
they do all those fan edits, like the Jar Jar Binks edit, or the non-prequel edit, or like they take all the 5 minutes of good parts from all three prequels and smash them together. Movie. But they should do the Christian Slater Han Solo edit of A New Hope. And
oh my god!
If I don't get these coordinates right, we could fly through a planet. I'm getting into
what an asteroid field. Oh god, I don't do a good Slater.
I know. I almost did.
But no, like we were saying, Nimoy got to actually like act in those, and Wrath of Khan, just because of the way it was done. Like it is honestly like an apocalyptic weapon that they have, and like yes, it creates birth of new life, but
Dr. McCoy is absolutely right about everything he says. His little tantrum is absolutely doomsday.
Yeah. It is like this thing will fuck anything it touches.
And that's the moral dilemma, because what are Doctors Marcus's trying to do? They're trying to save. We're going to solve overpopulation. We're going to do instant terraforming. Aren't we good? It's the common good.
Yeah.
Oh no, it could be seriously fucked up. And also, in my rush to be the common good, I used a banned dangerous substance, and now everything's still fucked up. It's like, all I did was make a weapon. That's all it's good. That's all Genesis was good for, is to blow planets up.
Pretty much. And I know Search for Spock is the one right after that.
Yes.
I will admit. So it's Undiscovered Country, right? Is one of them.
No, it's 6. See, I actually invented a cool little remembering, like a way to remember.
Okay, I wanted this.
And it's like based on kind of, because I'm a Trekkie. I can cite episode, season, and number for most episodes except for Voyager.
Yeah.
But like, it's the Star Trek 1 is the one that's the movie. Star Trek 2 is the one where Spock dies. Star Trek 3 is the one where Spock lives. Star Trek 4 is the one with the whales. Star Trek 5 is the one that sucks ass, and Star Trek 6 is the one that doesn't suck ass.
Oh my god, I want a poster that says that.
Yeah, or just the real poster, but it says Star Trek instead of Undiscovered Country. It says Star Trek 6. It sucks less than the last one.
Yeah.
Which
I was just gonna
we'll
say,
never let Shatner direct again.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I am behind on rewatching a lot of the classic films, even the ones that suck, because I don't know. I feel like even when they weren't good, they had heart, because it seemed like most of the people who were in them still liked being those characters. At least that's the way I feel like they're getting from screen. And it's mainly characters like Scotty. Like he comes to life so well on screen. Like you just love that character. Like I have watched Star Trek because I knew Scotty was going to be on screen. Like, oh my god, Scotty! I love Scotty.
Yeah. Well, and like except in Star Trek 5 where he's a total buffoon all of a sudden. Because that's what one of the good parts of Star Trek 5, except for Scotty, is the characters are the same. Dr. McCoy is Dr. McCoy, Spock is Spock, Kirk is Kirk. Scotty suddenly doesn't know how to fix the transporter, doesn't know how not to walk into a wall on his own ship. And
wasn't it a beam?
Well, it was like a cross beam. But they said, in Star Trek 4, the one with the whales, there was so much comedy and people loved it. And it's still the highest grossing, even when you adjust for inflation, it's still the highest grossing feature Star Trek film. So let's just turn the comedy to 11 and have Scotty can't fix the Enterprise. Why is the Enterprise? The Enterprise broke. They gave him a broke ship at the end of, let's see what she's got. The captain said, "Oh, we found out, didn't we?"
That does kind of bring it back.
The whole, we're camping in Yosemite without our communicators. Ha ha. Or somehow Chekhov and Sulu, even on shore leave, they spend shore leave together. Like they couldn't figure out things for Sulu to do without Chekhov.
I don't know.
They're just hiking.
What I think too is they had all this trouble.
We have a job where we sit next to each other for 12 hours a day flying a starship. Do you think maybe they'd spend vacation away from each other for 2 days?
Right? You think they'd just be fucking done with each other? It's like you just take a long car ride with someone you like and you start to get tired of them. Like you say, they work together every single day.
Right.
Well, and what's hilarious is like they there's that whole joke. They're camping in Yosemite and they don't really know what to do, and then you're in Next Gen and they go to the fucking holodeck to do that.
Yeah.
To turn off their communicator and camp.
Yes.
Maybe that was the evolution of the way it was going. Maybe, it's a different generation. They're just too used to their communicators. But
yeah. And the reason, it's kind of funny how the holodeck wasn't fully realized, because deck implied, I think Roddenberry's full vision was like it was a whole deck in the saucer.
Actually,
which is why you have room to explore a forest.
I don't remember where, but I did watch something where someone was talking that Roddenberry originally wanted. It was actually, it was a whole floor of the ship, and that's why you had space.
Yeah.
They never explain how you could walk for 10 miles straight forward and not touch the wall.
Yeah, like is there a treadmill, or do you just not feel the sensation of the graphics moving around you?
They did establish that the photon particles excited by the holodeck could interact with you, so maybe it's the sliding floor idea.
Well, and I will point out, I'll go all the way back to Encounter at Farpoint, where Data actually does touch. We're at the back wall, and it's like a forced perspective of what they're looking at. And then Wesley falls into a pond, and he steps out of the holodeck, and he's still wet. Mind blown.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
And yet Moriarty could not exist outside the holodeck. They built a hollow ship
within a hologram.
Oh my god, meta.
Yeah.
I forgot about Wesley still being wet though. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that now.
Yeah. Trivia.
I am working on getting. They're really expensive, but I want to get the full series. Not only so you and me can do our redacted name series, but also so we could just fucking watch
commentary tracks. That's never been done on the internets before.
Why? What is a commentary track, you say, Steven? Is this some sort of track where you comment over the film?
Would we watch something and then comment about it, make jokes about it?
My God.
Inside jokes?
We'll make $1 million.
I think you're onto something, William. I think you're onto something.
Hint, hint, people, this is in the works. We're going to try to get it going.
It's been in the works for 5 years. I just need to get serious about it.
Hey, some of the best things are in the work for 5 years.
I know. I'm like those guys in Knocked Up, where they're like, we're just minutes away from putting together our website.
Yeah, but they just never launched it.
We got this great idea, putting together this website.
And they realized Mr. Skin did it before they did.
Too late.
Man, Seth Rogen's so good when he doesn't write for himself. He's like Adam Sandler. If someone else writes for him, he's great.
Man, I want to see Seth Rogen and Bill Hader in Star Trek.
Is that happening?
Wouldn't that be great if they were like just two crewmen, like they're like the transporter chiefs or something?
Right? Yeah, or like two technicians just kind of wandering around.
Not even trying to be funny. They're just like in Star Trek.
They're just there, yeah. I wouldn't mind that.
Because Seth MacFarlane has gotten walk-on roles. He's been a crew member in a couple episodes of Enterprise back in the day. Yeah. He actually got, because he's part of SAG, so we actually got to have lines instead of just normally they just let you walk in the background. But,
man,
again, back to what we were talking about, a cameo in a Star Trek. But even though Discovery is kind of lame, I would absolutely show up in Discovery if I could.
I'm the same way. Like I didn't like Enterprise. I saw like 3 episodes of it and it just didn't catch me. And I'm not speaking negatively to anyone in it. There's actually a few people I've seen in there that I've seen in other TV shows. I'm like, you know what? These people are pretty good. But I can't remember names. You know me. I'm terrible with actors. I know who the person is. I can't remember their name.
Yeah.
I think Vincent Price is the only person I can pull up every single time. But that's because my weird obsession with him. Oh man, did you see him in the movie Laura? He's so young.
Yeah.
And he still looks exactly the freaking same.
Did you see him in the commercial for the 3D camera? Easy as 1, 2, 3?
No, but someone said to me that was a thing, and I need to look it up.
Yeah,
I found a few Trekkies at work. I'm happy. I have a couple people who know what I'm talking about. And by a couple, I mean literally 2 people who know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard these days. It's, Star Trek does not hold... People know what it is. Like, oh, beam me up. Haha. Warp speed.
Yeah.
But people don't... It's not the draw it used to be. It's a product now, again. It's not...
People know what it is, not what it was.
But it's not inspirational. And like we were talking about earlier, is it used to be... Star Trek was the benign exploration of the galaxy for the betterment of mankind and everyone we meet. We want to learn about you, and we want you to learn about us, and we want to be friends.
Yeah, join the Federation. We'll all be a big happy family.
Yeah, and sometimes you meet Romulans and you got to go to war. But but again, it's the nobody wants to deal with that heavy-handed moral dilemma stuff anymore. Even the pilot. The Cage was about Captain Pike wondering, should I be a captain in Starfleet? Did I make the right choices in life? Am I strong enough to be presented with a literal vision of my past? Or am I tempted to live now I'm in this cage area on this planet? Will I be tempted with everything I want except freedom? Those are NBC took that and said, no, we got to have people shooting at each other. And then they rewrote that, and they brought in Kirk, and then they did Where No Man Has Gone Before, which is Kirk's best friend is suddenly immortal and godlike and now has attitude, and Kirk has to, do I kill my best friend or do I?
Yeah.
Still a moral dilemma, but it's more cut and dry.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's like, yes, you have to kill your best friend, otherwise nobody lives.
Well, and they have even more of a micro look in that. I mean, just bring it back to Wrath of Khan, the Kobayashi Maru. The test that they test all future possible captains,
right?
And people who fail it, it takes a while before they realize, oh, you can't win,
right? It's
you have to deal with that as an inevitability with you as a captain, that maybe everyone will die.
Yeah,
and it's not your fault. You can't keep everyone from dying.
And one episode of Next Gen that drives that home with a different test is when Counselor Troy is trying to get her promotion to full commander and get her bridge credit.
Oh, yeah.
Her credit for being a bridge officer, even though she's on the bridge for some reason all the time.
Because of the short skirt in the first season.
She's never been she's Captain Picard's ringer. Captain Picard can say, is this guy telling the truth? No? Okay, you're not telling the truth. My Betazoid says you're not telling the truth. But she's trying to be official and get that full 3 dots on her collar. And the scenario is that she has to order Geordi to his death to save the ship, and she doesn't get it. She's like, she does this thing like 20 times. She's like, there has to be a way to save the ship without killing Geordi. And it's like, no, you have to realize that in real life, there's going to be a situation where you may have to send someone to die to save everybody.
Okay, so I can't remember.
Moral dilemma in
I
space.
can't remember the title.
But that's what Star Trek is. It's not about firing phasers and shooting Klingons. It's about people who live and work in outer space and the moral dilemmas they face because of that.
So to tie into exactly what you're saying, that like someone might have to die. So I forgot what the name of the episode. Actually, forgot isn't the right word. I don't know the name of the episode. Captain Picard meets the astronomy scientist on the ship, falls in love with her, right? She's on the surface of that planet with the crazy... Yeah.
Told you.
She's on the. Hey man, that's what I said. 6, I envy you.
Lessons.
But yeah, so she's on that planet that has the megastorms that roll through, and she's helping that crew study the planet. Mm-hmm. And the storm comes through, and they're trying to set up this shield that will block enough of it so the transporter or the teleporter or transporters can get everyone up.
Did you say teleporter? Are you kidding me?
I'm still stuck on.
Are you fucking kidding me, William?
Hey, didn't we just?
I'm leaving.
Didn't we just walk in here from watching Rick and Morty?
Yes, I watched my first 5 minutes of Rick and Morty.
Yeah, season 3. You stepped in on season 3, first episode, but
it's got something to do with green portals. I don't know. It's some old guy.
They're pretty.
I'll
sexy.
get into it. I'm sure.
but no, like Captain Picard has to make that deal. He's like, this is the woman I love. It's like I love this woman. He knows it, but she has to stay to keep the shields up so everyone can get off.
Yeah. And
he thinks she's dead for a while because they lose communication. They see that the shields failed. They don't, he can't get a hold of the teleporter room, and then all of a sudden it pops up. She's teleported fine or transported fine. Everything's good.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I loved that strife that whole thing with the captain. It's like he has to accept that the only person he really truly wanted to save, he would have to let die so that the multiple of his crew members who are supposed to be just as important can make it back.
And then she transfers off the ship.
Because
that's why you don't date a superior officer, because you're going to put yourself in that position.
Well, that when the HR review comes through, it's going to be pretty bad.
Well, you give your girlfriend great performance reviews, Captain. Big surprise. Or but another, I lost my train of thought. That's also, it was something to do with Counselor Troy again, and I can't remember now.
Was it the fact that all of us really, or all kids my age really strive to be like, oh man, I want to see that lady topless, and then we realize that there's like multiple movies where you could just do that.
There were all, that was the beginning of her career. Was in all the Death Wish films, all the canon films.
It actually made me sad because it was that whole like pursuing a knowingly unreachable goal, and then all of a sudden someone's like, no, there's like 3 movies. Go ahead, and you're like, shit. And they're like canon movies. You get them for like $3.
Even at age 8, in between season 1 and 2, I'm like, oh, Tasha Yar left the show. We get the short brunette, not the tall, skinny blonde. Damn it! No, just kidding. I wasn't that sexist. I am now, but I wasn't that sexist.
And yet we never got to see 7 of 9 topless.
Yeah, Jerry Ryan never did any racy stuff. She went right into network TV after her Voyager stint.
I can straight up say that for a while when I was growing up, I wanted that that sparkly purple onesie to just go away.
To run your finger over her little eye makeup thingy there.
I thought that was amazing. If I could buy one for Heather and make her wear it, I would.
I could stare into your cortical processor any day. 7 of 9.
Yep.
Yeah.
She can inject her nanites into me anytime.
Oh, I remembered the episode I was gonna reference.
Ooh.
About like characters and stuff. The one called, it's every year they have to do like a courtroom drama episode.
Yeah.
And this one is from also season 3 of Next Gen. It's called A Matter of Perspective. And it also has one of my favorite ever character actors, Mark Margolis, in it, as this scientist who's inventing a new way to travel at warp speeds without warp engines called Krieger waves. And he's this real asshole scientist who doesn't like working for the Federation because they don't pay well, because they're the Federation and they don't have
there
money.
Technically is no money, yeah.
And he's like trying to, eventually, as Riker is beaming out, basically this guy, he's a scientist and his wife lives on the station with him, and his wife is like all over Riker the whole time he's there, doing his inspection for his report to Starfleet. And the guy, like the station blows up as soon as Riker is like beams out. And the evidence points to the fact that Riker blew up the station to kill this guy. And they go through, and this is one where they do that, like all the recreations are on the holodeck, so like they're watching themselves, and every version of everyone has their perspective of the events that happened. But once they get to like the end of Act 3, where it's like the guy shows some data that looks like Riker right before transport, like turned around and shot a phaser at this big reactor. Like there's a minute there where Counselor Troy's like, holy shit, Will Riker's a murderer. Like you can see it in her eyes. Like Marina Sirtis does a good job. Like, this man I know may have just murdered these people. Like that's how good, like it's really well written and well, like even Picard is like, oh shit, I don't think we can get you out of this one, Will. Like, number one, you might have to go to jail.
What? You know what one I love? Speaking of the courtroom, because you said they do the courtroom scene every year. What is the one? The guy wants to do experiments on Data, so he's trying to prove that Data is just a machine.
And this is a great story because we were at a company lunch in front of our bosses who are not Star Trek people, and you referenced this.
Yes,
and I said,
I remember this.
And I said exactly, that's from season 2. The episode is called "The Measure of a Man," and our coworkers are like, "How do you remember these things?"
Oh my god! So yes, I do remember that event, and that is one of my favorite episodes. Well, one. I loved the character Data.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Spiner played him so well that you can't. There's some time on the front I'm going to cut off too.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I couldn't see the clock.
But like Brett Spiner played him so well. I mean, that's the reason I can remember his name. Is I love Data. I love Data so much. He's one of my favorite characters. But I actually loved the episode, not because there is another episode that makes you think, but both sides of the case
have a point.
Made so much sense. You couldn't disagree with either side. And I actually loved that.
Until Captain Picard paints a picture of a slave race of Datas. I'm like, oh, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah. Well, and I love that Data. I love the idea that Data picked, Commander Riker to represent the opposing point.
No, Data didn't do that. Riker volunteered because if there was no defense attorney,
that's right.
The judge would have just ruled in the guy's favor.
That's right. And Riker said, because of my duties, I have to do as best a job as I can to defend this. And
great part of that episode is at the end, there's this very touching moment where Riker goes to apologize to Data for saying, I almost got you killed. Because he did the whole demonstration where he just turns Data off in the middle.
Takes his arm off,
it's like, does a sentient being have an off button? And Data's like, no, Commander Riker. If you hadn't acted that way, they would have just ruled against me and I'd be in a box right now.
Yeah.
You sacrificed yourself for me and I'll never forget that.
Well, yeah.
I was like, I'm crying real tears now because they're going to be best friends forever. And it's like, oh, it's great.
Well, I loved it too because the first thing, I love the Data states his case and everything. And the first thing Riker does when it's his turn is he walks up to Data and he says, Data, remove your right arm.
Yeah.
And Data just pulls his fucking arm off.
But even there's that touching moment where he leans in to take it and he's like, I'm sorry, Data. Like, oh, that's so tense and
Well, and it's the
drama,
and it's pretty cool because Picard, they always showed him kind of on the fence as whether Data's because they had those moments like, why is Data piloting the ship? He's a machine, all those. But like,
there's also why is Data in command of this ship full of humans? He's a machine.
Yeah, but
I don't trust you.
But it seemed like Riker, who was a commanding officer, and then Geordi, who was like a systems engineer, like he could run that whole fucking ship. Both of them seemed to have that character thing where both of them were like, Data's a person.
Mm-hmm.
From like day one of that series, both of them seemed to be like, Data's a person.
Yeah.
So when that episode came through and like Riker is like trying to get Data killed because his duty is that he has to defend that point to the best of his abilities, like, you're like, fuck, man.
Yeah. And then also in season 2, you have Dr. Pulaski on the ship instead of Crusher for that 1 year because Gates McFadden wanted off the show too. But eventually, obviously, came back. And also, I'm looking again at your picture of Gates McFadden playing with herself.
I'm so glad she came back. I still, Heather knows this, but I still have such a crush on Gates McFadden.
Oh boy! But Pulaski was like the female Dr. McCoy. She didn't use the transporter, and she didn't like. At first, she didn't like Data. She wasn't polite to him. She didn't like use common courtesy around him.
No, it was like
he's a machine.
Even
when she wouldn't even pronounce his name right. It's like, I don't. Oh, you care about how your machine cares about how I pronounce its name? That's funny, But by the end of by the end of the season, she was on board with Data's a man like anyone else,
Yeah,
it just happens to be artificial.
And I mean, we're getting close to the end here, but I just have to make this point. With all the setup of like how important it was from Data's creator to show Data that it's like, I created you so well, you are a being, you have a soul, essentially. Why did we start focusing in on the personal strifes of Worf? I like Worf, don't get me wrong, but Data had so much more to offer us, I think.
Because the Klingon culture is very... the next gen, and they continued on to Deep Space Nine, they wrote all of Klingon culture, all these traditions Worf is obsessed with, and all these...
it didn't exist yet.
The Civil War and all that, and... Worf was interesting because he was pretty contradictory because he's like, I was raised by humans, but I'm trying to be Klingon.
Yeah.
But he always ends up making the human decision, by the end of the show. And he always ends up standing. They eventually kind of have him on Deep Space Nine, where I'm myself. I am Worf. I live by my personal code of conduct, and Klingon tradition be damned.
Yeah. Well, I'll say my last point of this. At least as my perspective of it is, I would rather see the creation of a man's soul than the reestablishment of a man's soul. Does that make sense? Because Worf, we got like you said, he's stepping away from what Klingons basically are. But Data would have become a person. Like, we should have followed him more. In my opinion.
I don't know. Worf was interesting because his character was a gimmick. He didn't even have anything to do.
No, he's just like, I am a Klingon.
He's a Klingon in Starfleet, and that was his character.
I am head of security.
Yell and there's he wasn't. Yara was head of security in the first season, so he was just like a guy at the back console, like, Captain, I have some information for you, or he would substitute for Geordi at Ops,
Yeah.
And but then later it's like, okay. It makes sense that they really hit the reset button after season 1 because they're like, oh, Geordi's the chief engineer after being the navigator now, and then and how does that work and stuff? Like, did he just take a vacation from engineering and to try his hand at navigating?
Maybe it was like his 9th application, and finally, like, there was a spot open.
That doesn't happen on the Enterprise. There's a wait list to be like the 4th shift cook on the Enterprise. William.
I would be 4th shift cook on the Enterprise.
But then they're like, oh yeah, what job would a Klingon do in Starfleet? Fucking security.
Security,
what else?
because he's big and tough and he can punch people. Yeah.
And he's concerned very much about the safety of his captain.
And that character, I have to admit, that character did kind of fit. Like the warrior race. This is your leader, so Captain Picard's the leader.
He has his instinct. Klingons are an instinctual people. They're an emotional people. But Worf, I thought definitely grew as a character over the 2 shows that he was in.
Oh, definitely.
Not in the movies, because he just keeps showing up for no reason, because we have to have Worf in there. And even after, because Deep Space Nine established he was supposed to be the Federation ambassador to Klingon.
Yeah.
And then next year he just shows up, he's in uniform still at Picard at the wedding.
Yeah.
And I'll just tag along on the Enterprise.
Well, and
Worf's here, don't ask why.
The best thing that Next Gen ever did for us was they established that Klingons have rough sex.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
especially
we all needed that.
On Deep Space Nine with Worf and Dax coming out of the holosuite all bruised up and like, oh, geez, Friday night on Deep Space Nine.
I like the episode of Next Gen with the Metamorph. And she's walking by the one who adapts to the person she's supposed to be with forever.
Oh, Famke Janssen.
Yeah. And she's walking by Worf and she just goes, oh, and he growls back at her, and like that's their only interaction. Is this sexual growl as they go past each other?
Well, and there's also the one where Guinan is like, why don't you date Worf? That's also the one where she introduces him to prune juice. And he's like, oh, warriors drink.
Of course it tastes like
foul.
Shit.
Foulest thing
blood
ever made
wine.
from fruit.
Klingon blood wine.
But he's always like, I would require a Klingon woman. And it's like, yeah, literally, because he'd probably break a human girl in half.
Yeah. They very well might die.
Yeah.
From just the experience. Maybe that's a whole thing.
I'm guessing that the Klingon cock is just full of pointy spikes and.
Oh, didn't you know that the batlith is actually a direct replica of the Klingon
that's what I
penis?
figured. Yeah, that's got to be it.
It's got a heavy upward curve.
No wonder they go right to the stomach with it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's they call it the impregnation thrust.
Yes.
All right, we've done enough. Well, thank you for listening to Booze and Movies and Star Trek, apparently.
Thanks for making it through this whole thing with us. Good night.
See you next time.
Good night, everybody.